I'm Dennis Johnson from Melville House. We're deep in the coronavirus lockdown here in New York City. Staff is all working from home. So I've been calling up a lot of colleagues and friends in the business just to ask them what they're doing to get by, looking for tips, strategies, maybe a little inspiration along the way. So I'm speaking today to Lissa Muscatine and Bradley Graham, the husband and wife team that owns one of America's most famous and beloved bookstores, Politics and Prose in Washington, D.C. Thank you both for speaking with me. It's great to see you and to see you in situ in the store.
It's great to see you too, Dennis. I guess you're now launched on a new career as a video producer, huh?
Well, you know, in this day and age, you got to have more than one hat in the ring there. You never know. But my first question to you is just, how are you? How is the store? How are you holding
Oh, how are we?
It's still here, so that's good news.
Yeah.
No, it's been a challenge, as you can imagine, to try to balance a public health pandemic with the survival of a very treasured local institution and retail business with the lives and livelihoods of over 100 staff people, and that's been the kind of daily equation that you confront in this situation. So but we're still here. Our staff has been amazing, really keeping things going and being very innovative and adaptive and helping us do what we need to do to get through this.
So, Liz and I've been in the book business now nearly a decade, and we've known from the beginning, that we're going to have to be agile and quick on our feet. But I mean, this is really testing.
I know. That. Did you ever think it could get harder?
Well, you get to be our age and you think, well, you've pretty much seen it all. You know what new can happen. And of course, we hadn't ever lived through a pandemic, and here we are.
I think that we all have business owners, small business owners, all have nerves of steel, which is the one thing we bring into it that maybe a lot of other people didn't have. But and an ability to deal with the unknown. Just you don't know what's going to happen next when you're a small business.
I think actually we are fortunate in a way. I mean, if we're going to be in retail, it's really helpful to be a part of this community of booksellers around the country, because from what I can tell, bookstores have been among the most creative and resourceful in figuring out how to adjust. And it's been so useful to be able to be in these chat groups online with fellow booksellers around the country to hear how they're adjusting and what they're trying, because we've gotten so many good ideas from our colleagues.
Well, can I just also say, Dennis, and I don't want to embarrass you, but you've kind of put a stamp of innovation on publishing, on independent publishing, and have been out there. And I hope everybody who ever watches this realizes that you're one of the great innovators and mavericks in a good way. I mean, in the publishing business, and you are a person of your convictions, and you publish things accordingly, and you take chances, and you try new things. And I hope that ability to think creatively and outside of the box also serves you well at a time that's got to be incredibly hard for you as a small publisher.
Well, that's so kind of you. Thank you for saying that. But yeah, we all have to think on our feet right now, don't we? And this idea for this conversation comes out of exactly what you were talking about, Brad. It's just that I found myself calling colleagues on getting used to Zooming people more and more, and just to talk shop. What are you doing? And also nice to see your face. Nice to see you hanging in there. We really, here in New York, I haven't had a face-to-face encounter with another human being in months. Yeah. Literally months. It's so bizarre. Yeah. But thank God for the ability to phone into colleagues like this. I want to get to just what you went through at the store. How did this come upon you? You know, when do you remember when you first became aware, oh, we are actually going to have to deal with this, we may have to close the store? Can you walk me through the beginning days of this and take us through that?
Yeah, you know, it kind of came initially rather slowly to us, I think, as it did to many around the country. But the first kind of oh my gosh moment came when some of the stores on the West Coast uh, faced closure orders. And I remember thinking, I think this was early March, that wow, that might happen to us. You know, what are we going to do? We tried to hang on and stay open as long as we could, as long as it seemed safe for our employees and for the community. And that got us to about the middle of March. I mean, I remember we were scrambling to get some basic supplies like Purell dispensers and wipes, and we continued to have author talks, but started spacing the chairs out, you know, to try to get 6 feet among audience members. But then finally, you know, we had to close the store to foot traffic and begin to pivot our operations to web orders. And we also started up this, you know, curbside pickup service, and that seemed pretty popular, and we were hopeful for that. But then when the DC mayor announced the stay-at-home order in late March, we were prohibited from continuing curbside, and that's when we just became a, you know, essentially a web and phone order processing and shipping facility,
Right.
which is, you know, so true of so many independent bookstores around the country.
Were you doing that just out of the main store or all of the stores?
Well, essentially the main store. We have 2 other branches. They're much smaller, and we were able to do curbside out of those other 2. But when that stopped, only one of the other 2 branches did some ongoing web order processing. The other thing that we did do when we had to stop with our in-store events was very quickly find a platform to use to switch our events online.
Right.
And I think we were among the first bookstores to discover this platform called Crowdcast, which is rather new and has some advantages over Zoom for our purposes. Like you can put a buy button there, and there's a green room, and some other things that seem to, you know, make it attractive. And so we just, as quickly as we could, we shifted as many of the previously scheduled author talks that we had in person, moved them online, and we've continued with that. We've even now added some of our classes. You know, we have this program, literary classes, and we're offering those online as well. And you know, I think that's one innovation that is likely to stay with us, even as, you know, we move to sort of reopening our stores. It seems unrealistic that we'll be able to do in-store events for a while.
Right. Well, I think publishers are thinking about the future being full of virtual events as well. You can now tour your authors for a much more reasonable sum, and the question is, you know, are they working? You guys had you were very good at filming events or videoing events at Politics and Prose and putting them online. I've watched many of your events online. So you were kind of prepared for this, but it's different now. We were speaking earlier, it's different now in that it's live.
We're live streaming, which is different. You can then watch the replay. So yeah, we were in a pretty good position because we have our own YouTube channel that gets lots and lots of viewers. And we had tested a few events live before, but certainly not the majority of them. And like Brad said, our classes are now, a lot of them through this platform as well. what's interesting is that and I'm sure publishers like this too, is that we're attracting audiences from much further afield.
Right.
Now that's partly because, we're known for events and we were one of the first to get one of these live stream platforms up and going. But, it's also because people don't have a lot to do, frankly. So we'll see when things start resuming how popular, and there's going to be so many things online
Right.
for people to choose from. So I think, that's going to be something to keep watching for. We don't want to lose in-store events, and I think authors get a huge benefit from being in a room with people, and people get a huge benefit from being in a room and being able to question the author in person, getting to see them sign the book. So hopefully, there are innovations that will stick, but also we won't lose that personal aspect of, author to reader communication that's really important.
Well, you may actually be expanding that if you've got live and virtual both working. Are you seeing decent sales from the virtual events? Would you say that it's working or still in progress?
It's a mix. We're getting a lot of viewers, but that hasn't always translated into book sales. We have done some events where a ticket or book purchase is required, and those have done pretty well.
Yeah.
And we can do that when the author's particularly popular or well known. But a lot of people seem to be tuning in just for the entertainment value. See
a famous writer. Well, you guys already had a pretty robust website for online sales. I can attest to myself. I've bought books online from you. It's quick fulfillment. Has it been able to keep up with a new level of demand?
Well, we've been overwhelmed. And, we had already a web operation of several people, but that even before the crisis started, but they proved to be sort of inadequate to manage the surge of orders. So we learned about Ingram's service. They have two different services, customer direct fulfillment and direct to home fulfillment, which we have taken full advantage of to try to deflect some of the orders that have come to us.
Can you explain
over to Ingram?
Could you explain the difference between those two offerings?
Well, I guess a little technical, but Ingram direct fulfillment is as simple as kind of pushing a button, and an web order comes in, and if it meets certain characteristics, the order involves a book or books in the same Ingram warehouse and other things, then you can just simply, without even the customer being aware,
right,
send the order over to Ingram, and Ingram has huge warehouses. They're the country's biggest book wholesaler, and they're able to fulfill the order, package the book, and ship it to the customer. Direct to home involves more at our end, at the bookseller's end, and it's for more specialized cases, but it gives us more direct control and over an order and tracking ability. Our preference would be to be able to fill all orders, as we were doing before, from our own inventory. And if we don't have it, to special order it, have the book come in, and then send it out.
Right.
The margin is better ultimately on those kinds of sales. But we just weren't able to do that initially, and we ended up with a huge backlog. And it's taken us some weeks now to whittle it down. We finally have whittled it down, and so we've brought now much more of our fulfillment back in-house, and we intend to try to manage it that way.
I mean, I think it's important, sort of in a broader sense, Dennis. We had a pretty robust web service going that we would really see at the holidays, the Christmas holidays. But as Brad said, it was nowhere near capacity to take on this kind of a volume. The amazing thing is how quickly we and I think all these other bookstores have been able to adapt. And it's not easy. We're not Amazon, we're not Borders or Barnes and Noble with giant warehouses, or Ingram. And for these independent bookstores to suddenly have to convert what is an in-store experience
Right.
online to completely, and to go from a small percentage of your total revenues being online to hopefully at least 50% or more, that requires a lot of adaptation.
It's a new business.
And technologically too. So it took us a little bit of time to figure out how can we get people to be able to work remotely. It's not as easy as it seems when you have credit card processing and security issues and inventory control and all that, and then who's going to come in and who's not going to come in, and you're creating an almost entirely new infrastructure to deal with curbside pickup, and to deal with delivering, and to deal with everything being converted online. And I just think that our staff who have pulled this off have they've been heroic in figuring out how to do it, and really to do it so quickly. It's not enough, unfortunately, right? It's not ever probably going to be enough in the immediate future, but to even get this far this quickly is kind of amazing.
So, but here's some of the lasting benefits of having to scramble to figure this out. We've got many more people now on staff who know how to process web orders. Right. So with future surges, we'll be able to draw on a lot of other booksellers who could, swing over to process web orders. And we've learned, as Lissa just alluded to, how to use staff operating remotely, because we've had a dozen or 15 in the store throughout this every day, but more staff have wanted to stay home, and we have found how to use our phone system to redirect calls to our main number to people's cell phones of staff members, who can then sit at home on their computers and log in to their desktops at work and into our inventory system, so that from the point of view of the customer, they're just talking to a bookseller. They don't know the person's in the store or not in the store, and that bookseller can remotely process orders.
Right.
It's amazing what you can do, but first you have to learn how to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It took some figuring out.
Well, figuring out, in some cases, adapting the technology or incorporating new technologies. It's not automatic,
Right.
Like, oh, you can just do everything remotely. Well, no, not if you're not a web order fulfillment operation to begin with.
Exactly. And there's another thing on your. I feel like you guys are way ahead on subscription services. And that's something you've been doing for a long time. I don't know about the actual operations of it, but it seems to me you have a really wide array of offerings. You can subscribe for different periods of time, for I think monthly, every other month, a year, half a year, whatever.
Yeah.
Really well developed thinking on that. How is that operating for you now? Are you seeing increased interest in this? Is it going smoothly? How is that part of your business?
We definitely seen a surge in interest in our Book a Month program, and we have a children's also a Book a Month program, and there's our subscriptions have skyrocketed.
Really?
Yeah.
That's terrific. That's terrific. So you just reopened for curbside a couple of days ago, and what does that mean, and how is that working?
It took a little persuading to get the mayor's office to let us do that. I mean, we're on a block with 5 restaurants and a liquor store, and they were allowed all through this period of the stay-at-home order to do pickups. And we kept writing to the mayor and others, hey, how about us? How about books? And so they finally have created what they're calling a pilot program for non-essential retail. And it basically involves academic and education retail shops, which include bookstores. Pilot program for a few weeks to do curbside pickup. So we've been able, under that permission, to resume this curbside activity that we were doing briefly in March. And it's been great. I mean, customers have really responded. We're fulfilling dozens of orders a day already this week. We've seen a decrease in the web orders for people request to have books shipped, and there's a as we're getting more and more orders for pickup.
Wow, that's very interesting.
And there's no traffic right now, so people don't mind coming to pick up.
That's what it is. It's an excuse to get out.
Yeah.
I can relate. So what does it mean for the store itself, though, now that you're switching from being just a online fulfillment center? You got more staff back in, or what does it actually mean for the business?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to figure that out. I mean, sales are, better than I thought they would be with the doors still closed to foot traffic, but they're nowhere near where they need to be, for the long-term sustainability of the company. I think we're going to be able to do only so much, fulfilling web and phone orders, whether it's by shipping or curbside. So at some point, we're going to have to figure out how to get at least some customers flowing back into and out of the store. And so it's going to be a process.
And employees. I mean, I think what we're trying to do now is come up with a whole set of protocols that will be reassuring both to customers and to staff who have to work in this indoor space all day long, when there are more people going to be here. And we are pretty committed to going, above and beyond whatever the real requirements are and being very cautious and gradual. But like Brad said, we don't expect there to be in-store events for quite a long time, both because of fears of people grouping together in enclosed spaces, and also for the reason that you cited, which is that publishers now realize they can have their authors sit in their kitchen and reach zillions of people across the country without going on airplanes and trains and hotel rooms and meals and all that. So, I assume that publishers will continue to send, big name authors on tours, I hope eventually. But, we're going to have to really have protocols in place, and nobody knows though what's going to happen, and is there going to be a second wave and more spikes, and when you do start resuming activity, we've been very, very fortunate that no one has come down with COVID on our staff, but how long is that going to last for any business that's operating now?
It's amazing that you've avoided that with such a big staff. I think about half of our staff has had it.
Yeah, well, New York also, I think, was harder hit.
Yeah.
And you guys probably, we have a lot of staff who also worry about taking public transportation.
Yeah.
And, there's so many gifts.
That was our bottom line. We're not going to reopen until we feel comfortable with people getting on a subway.
That, and then, we don't have a lot of people in this situation, but we do have some people who have small kids at home. Yeah. And if those kids aren't going to camp and school,
yeah.
I mean, fortunately, we can probably retain some people working remotely for a while, but it's not a pretty picture when you think about some of these trade-offs that are undoubtedly going to have to be made.
Right.
I mean, before the crisis, the basic bookstore model was based on, making ourselves as enticing and attractive to bring people in, to interact with them. But now, we've switched to this essentially kind of a grab and go remote order fulfillment model. And it feels strange. It doesn't feel like us,
Yeah.
And yet I think it's going to be our reality for the foreseeable future. And like so many other bookstores, we're trying to, figure this out.
I mean, I think where we still have a leg up, or not a leg up, but where we are have our own identity vis-a-vis the real big warehouse fulfillment, evil axis of evil empire type companies.
I know who you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about. We still are working really hard. As Brad said, we have these, this capacity now to have phones being answered, many, many phones,
Right.
and having booksellers on, on a phone call, checking an order, making a recommendation, helping people in effect browse from a distance. It's not the same as being in the store and browsing, but at least, they have some human contact, which is what has always separated us from, from the Goliaths.
Yeah. The particular Goliath you're referring to, I think, is actually losing market share right now. Some of it to other behemoths like Target and Walmart, but also to booksellers, because Prime isn't what it used to be. People are not getting books in 2 days. One of our biggest selling books of the last year or so, How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell, the last time.
Great book.
Thank you.
Love that book.
The last time I looked, they had, you had to wait 5 weeks for delivery on that, even though it's in that company's warehouse. So it's an interesting thing about the moment that, I'm not worried about that company. They're going to be okay, but they are going to lose the market share. And I think a lot of people are going to have a new habit, which is getting a book from my local indie because I'll get it in a day or two anyway.
Right.
So that's a good thing. I wanted to ask you if you could speak to what is selling, even just in general terms. What's trending there? Do you have an idea of that?
Dennis, this may be really hard for you to believe, given that we are a bookstore in Washington, D.C. But what has been really popular are all the books about pandemics and dystopian, horrors. So the plague and the end of October have been among our biggest sellers, which I personally just can't go there. I need my mysteries or my whatever. Hilary Mantel, of course, is everybody now has time to read, if not the latest book, the trilogy.
Right.
So we've seen a lot of sales of Hilary Mantel. We have the cookbook Dining In has been doing really well for obvious reasons. I think our political books always do well. There's the new book, Pelosi, which is really good. Jonathan Karl, his book about Trump, which is really entertaining. I mean, I didn't think I could take another book about Trump, but we had a huge event with him. We had a huge event for all these political books. So those are sort of the typical P&P trends, I would say, sort of predictable.
Well, it's heartening to hear that there's some front listers in there, because the national trends are, front list is way down.
Right.
It's backlist is what's selling, and nonfiction was not doing as well as fiction was, which is a reversal of recent history. So
I should also mention in that vein, Madeleine Albright's new book, Hell and Other Destinations, which has got a great review in the New York Times. And we had a wonderful, wonderful event with her, online event. And, she was great. She's just turned 83, and, this is her, I think, 6th or 7th book. And, she's so smart and so funny. And so we had a really fun event with her.
She was ahead of the curve with her last book, the fascism book, which I thought was terrific.
That goes down as one of the best book covers ever.
Oh, the cover, yeah.
Red fascism, a warning, with no colon.
Now she tells us.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my last question for you guys is one you've kind of been hinting at throughout the talk, but just what are you doing now that's new that you're going to take into the future with you and keep doing? Virtual events, I think, live events, it sounds like you'll keep doing. Any other kind of tactics or strategies you had to develop on the fly, though, that you like and are going to keep?
Well, having the staff cross-trained, as I was mentioning before, booksellers who could be web order people who could helping, you know, receiving or fielding phone calls. I mean, there's been a need for staff members to sort of, you know, learn other duties here at the store over the last couple of months, and I think, well, it's been central to our resiliency so far, and I think will continue to be.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the questions I have is, to what extent will businesses, all businesses, but businesses like ours that have certain kind of value system, you know, be able to offer flexibility for people in terms of being parents or needing to telework 1 or 2 days a week. And we know there are jobs that can be done that way in our business. We don't want to have everybody not working in the store. Obviously, we could never survive that way either. But, you know, are there ways and are there sort of metrics you can use to decide when that's appropriate or not, and allow that to become, you know, a benefit of working in a business that you get into because you care about books, but you certainly can barely make a living doing.
Right.
So are there other ways to make sort of adapt to uses of technology in that sense? And, you know, I think the vertical growth that we're describing, you know, with bigger audiences in more places, and how do you reach them? You know, how do you monetize some of that? Those are all things we'll try to carry forward.
Right. And do you have a date yet for when you'll get to the next phase, which would be having people in the store?
Well, you know, DC has been way behind most, if not all, the states in reopening. I mean, the city's stay-at-home order is in effect now, at least until June 8th.
Okay.
And so we don't really know, you know, when we're going to be allowed to take the next steps, even. You know, we're watching what's happening with all the other stores around the country. You know, we're looking very closely at maybe some kind of appointments system or some other way of very tightly regulating how many customers are in the store at once. But, you know,
I was reading about the reopening of Waterstones in the UK this morning, and they are very eager to open up. It's a lot of stores. And one thing they're going to do is they're going to put little book carts all over the store and ask customers after they finish looking at a book to put it on the book cart. And then they're going to quarantine those books for 72 hours in a back room to let the virus wear off. Even though it's likely the virus doesn't last on cardboard like that. But
well, that'll work, I guess, if you have ample quantities, you know.
Exactly.
List. But
exactly.
what do you do about the one or
That
two?
may be as much about customer assurance as it is about actual safety.
I mean, one thing that I would say is, you know, everybody's frustrated in DC because it's been longer to get back open, but, you know, I really have to give the mayor credit for being tough on this. She's the mayor of a city that is, you know, got a population that is extremely vulnerable and hard hit. And, you know, you just have to take that seriously. And I think our surrounding jurisdictions in Maryland and Virginia have also been really, you know, smart and aggressive. The problem is, you know, if one opens and the other doesn't, it's like New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, right?
Right.
It, you know, it's sort of this patchwork that creates problems. But, you know, I actually appreciate that Mayor Bowser has, you know, she's not getting pushed around too much, and she's got a reason to take this seriously in this particular jurisdiction.
Well, guys, I want to thank you for talking to me. I have so much admiration for you to begin with, and especially now you're keeping that ship afloat and taking care of your staff and thinking about your customers. Thank you so much. I hope you're taking care of yourselves too.
But you too, Dennis.
You too, Dennis.
Thank you so much for including us in this latest project of yours. We always like doing all kinds of work with you. So it's great to see you. Please give our love to Valerie and your team.
We will. Rock on, guys.
Take care, Dennis.
Stay safe.
You too.